A moment later, Ruby turned around and asked, "Isaac, why aren't you acting consistently?" Isaac shot back, "Then what would you do?" Ellen immediately retorted, "Don't joke around, at least I know how to say thank you. I'm different from father." Isaac wasn't about to be outdone. "Right, I know. You're the only one in our family with a conscience." Ruby, seeing the tense situation, grew anxious. She felt like she was the source of the conflict. Freya, unable to just sit and watch anymore, stood up and intervened before the situation could escalate further. Freya tried to persuade Isaac. "Is this really something worth arguing about? Stop it. We came here to have fun." Ruby, unsure how to get off the horse, sat still, feeling awkward as everyone seemed to forget about her. She could only cry inwardly. Fortunately, Isaac noticed her at that moment. Without a word, he reached out, gently taking Ruby's hand and helping her down from the horse. Once again, Ruby found herself in Isaac's embrace. She took the opportunity to speak up for reconciliation. "Stop arguing," she said softly. Isaac looked at her silently without speaking. Sensing his hesitation, Ruby quickly added with a playful pout, "Don't be angry because of me. This handsome face will be ruined." Freya, standing nearby, observed the interaction. Her expression suddenly became unreadable. Isaac remained quiet for a moment, then finally sighed and replied, "I'm not angry." Isaac even deliberately asked Ellen, "Are you angry with me?" as if to prove there was no tension between them. Despite the atmosphere calming down, Ruby still felt the need to thank Isaac. She looked at him affectionately, grateful for his support. Ruby said, "I will definitely not forget today. I'll even write it in my diary. Is that okay?" Isaac just shrugged and said, "Do as you please." Ruby forced a bright smile, though inwardly she was exhausted from maintaining this facade. After everything settled, everyone called her to the banquet table. As she approached, her face fell upon seeing a golden turtle figurine proudly displayed. Her hand trembled as she hesitated to touch the handle, wondering why it had to be a turtle. After a moment of mental struggle, Ruby managed to pick up her teacup. Ellen, noticing her unease, explained, "It's always like that between us," referring to the earlier tension with Isaac. Freya, still concerned, added, "Leaving Isaac alone like that can't be good." Ellen replied indifferently, "He'll know how to behave." Ruby looked at Isaac's back, lost in thought. As she tried to focus on the present moment, someone suddenly addressed her. "Is Madam's health all right?" It was Miss Conin, who was clearly looking for an opportunity to bring up the incident at Elmerport. Smirking, she added, "I heard Madam even had a nosebleed." Ruby instantly recognized Conin's intention to embarrass her in front of everyone, but she played dumb, responding politely, "I sincerely thank you for your concern, Miss Conin." But Conin wasn't done. "Ever since last time, I haven't seen Madam eat much. Is Madam on a diet, or is the food here not to your liking?" Ruby chuckled internally at the absurdity of it all, given that Conin had only met her twice. She casually replied, "I'm naturally a light eater." Conin then began lecturing. "Unlike in the South, here in the North you must take better care of your health. You wouldn't want to become a burden to others." Feigning gratitude, Ruby continued to smile. "Thank you for your concern, Miss Conin. Perhaps we should exchange more words over a cup of tea sometime." Later, Conin, at a loss for words, just smiled awkwardly. At that moment, a plate of cake was placed in front of Ruby. Ellen, noticing that Ruby had been busy with the conversation and hadn't eaten anything, proactively offered her the cake. Out of the blue, Freya brought up Ellen's earlier argument with Isaac. "Speaking of older brothers," she said, "I have one too. He's a reliable person." The topic naturally shifted to Ruby's brothers. When asked about them, Ruby simply replied, "My brothers often listen to my whims." Freya immediately expressed envy. "If I had brothers like that, I'd miss them a lot." Ruby sensed a hint of judgment in her words, but didn't dwell on it. She simply smiled and said, "Since I'm enjoying myself so much here, I haven't really thought about them." Taking advantage of the mention of Ruby's family, someone brought up Cardinal Valentino's visit to Arundel this year. Ruby, surprised by the question, replied that she had never heard of such a thing. She was also quite taken aback by Cesari's fame. The match was scheduled for late autumn, so Cesari would be arriving in a few months. Whether it was Cesari or Isaac, both were equally arrogant, and it was hard to imagine what would happen if the two ever met. After the banquet, Freya and Ruby went horseback riding in the forest. During their ride, Freya reassured Ruby, "Don't mind Conan. She's not necessarily a bad person. It's just that she's pursued Isaac for a long time, so she's a bit jealous." Ruby waved her hand dismissively, signalling that she understood. She even said with a smile, "I had anticipated that many ladies would admire my husband. After all, he's so dashing." Freya immediately complimented Ruby on her amiable nature, and the two continued their ride in good spirits. Freya added, "Actually, at first, I thought Madame was a formidable person." Ruby asked curiously. "Why is that?" Freya explained, "Because Madame is the Princess of Romania." Ruby nodded in agreement. If it were the original Rhea, it would be so, she thought. However, Ruby felt more drawn to the initial Rhea, believing that if she had truly liked her surroundings, she wouldn't have made such foolish choices. As they rode further, Ruby noticed they had gone quite far and wondered if they could continue further ahead. Freya reassured her, "As long as we don't go too deep inside, it's fine. This is the safest place to hold outdoor gatherings." Freya also noticed Ruby's skill at riding. Ruby modestly explained, "It's probably because I like horses, so I look more experienced." Suddenly, Freya proposed a horse riding competition. She pointed towards one side of the forest and said, "Follow the side road on the right, and you'll see the finish line on the other side. Whoever gets there first wins." Ruby recognized this as a golden opportunity to get closer to Freya and agreed without hesitation. Freya, familiar with the road, graciously offered to let Ruby start first. Ruby, without suspicion, followed Freya's suggestion. After saying goodbye, she eagerly rode toward the direction Freya had pointed. Sitting on horseback, Ruby felt more comfortable than ever. She couldn't help but let out a hearty laugh, something she hadn't done in a long time. Ruby untied her hair, letting her long locks flow in the wind, savouring the rare feeling of freedom. For the first time in a while, she wanted to fully utilise her abilities. Excited, Ruby called back to Freya, but there was no response. She turned and realised that no one was behind her. Confused and slightly uneasy, she wondered where Freya had gone, completely unaware of the danger lurking nearby. In her moment of vulnerability, a mysterious dark shadow sensed Ruby's presence. Taking advantage of her unguarded moment, it extended its tentacles and grabbed her ankle, pulling her off balance as her heart raced in panic. Ruby, caught off guard by the sudden attack, lost her balance and fell off her horse. As the strange tentacles clung to her body, she struggled frantically to break free despite not fully understanding what was happening. A tentacle suddenly reached out in front of her, and with a loud thud, something ominous had occurred. The sky darkened quickly, and the moonlight began to bathe the forest in an eerie glow. After being attacked, Ruby fainted. Groaning in pain, she finally regained consciousness some time later. Disoriented, she looked around, trying to grasp her surroundings. Suddenly, a noise behind her made her turn her head fearfully. Emerging from the bushes was a monstrous creature that resembled both a rabbit and a weasel, but far larger and more grotesque. Ruby stared at the creature, her mind racing to identify what it was. It had the body of a weasel, but was grotesquely oversized. As if to confirm her worst fears, the creature opened its gigantic mouth, revealing a pile of bones inside. Unsure if they belonged to humans or animals, Ruby's terror grew, and she let out a scream. Her eyes focused on the bones, and the more she looked, the more they resembled human remains. Her face drained of colour, and she nearly fainted on the spot. Sensing her fear, the weasel-like monster waved its hands, as though trying to reassure her not to be afraid. Then, to Ruby's shock, it took slow steps toward her. Ruby could only wave her hands frantically, begging it not to come closer. Just as she feared she was about to become its next meal, the creature suddenly scooped her up in its arms. Without a word, the monster held her tightly and began to run, darting through the forest at a terrifying speed. Ruby, still in shock, assumed it was carrying her away to finish her off. She cried out in desperation, pleading with it to let her go, but the creature showed no sign of stopping. Ruby thought in despair, "I tried so hard not to die at the hands of my husband, but now I'm going to be eaten by a fat monster." A sound, like that of a ferocious beast, echoed through the silent forest. Ruby and the weasel monster were hiding behind a rock, quietly observing. Curious about the source of the noise, Ruby peeked over the rock. The weasel monster quickly pushed her head down, urging her to stay hidden. The footsteps grew closer and closer. Ruby covered her mouth, trying to stifle any sound, but just at that moment she hiccuped. The noise wasn't too loud, but it was enough to draw the attention of the thing approaching. What appeared before them was a monstrous figure, an eerie, headless corpse riding a horse. Ruby, terrified, carefully observed the creature, unsure of what kind of monster it was. The headless rider scanned the area, seemingly searching for Ruby. She could only hold her breath, praying it wouldn't find her. With each of the rider's approaching steps, Ruby squeezed her eyes shut, refusing to reveal any sign of her presence. After what felt like an eternity, the terrifying creature finally turned and left. Ruby exhaled in relief, her heartbeat still racing. When she looked to the side, she saw the weasel monster scurrying off into the shadows. Ruby also noticed that the dark purple tentacles that had attacked her earlier were writhing nearby, occasionally sparking with electricity. Instinctively, she reached down to touch her ankle where the tentacles had grabbed her. Before Ruby could examine her injury further, the weasel monster returned. It gently placed a leaf on Ruby's forehead. Ruby, stunned, didn't know how to react to the strange gesture. After a moment of confusion, she realized that the creature was trying to help her. Hearing it make a soft noise, Ruby asked excitedly, "Can you understand me?" The weasel monster waved its hand in response, signaling that it did. But when she asked if it understood human language, it shook its head vigorously. It seemed that the creature could only understand the sound of Ruby's voice, not her words. Ruby, sensing the creature's willingness to help, decided to ask for one more favor. "Can you take me home?" The weasel monster's mood suddenly shifted, and it seemed strangely dejected. After a brief pause, it regained its composure, though Ruby couldn't help but notice the lingering sadness in its eyes. The weasel monster gestured for Ruby to climb onto its back. As she touched its hand, a surprisingly soft sensation spread through her fingers. Once Ruby was securely positioned, she informed the weasel monster that they could depart. With that, it leapt into the air, carrying her swiftly through the forest towards home. Meanwhile, on the other side of the forest, a search party was in full motion, calling out for Ruby. Andy, one of the searchers, shouted, "Madam, where are you?" Just as he finished, a rustling noise came from the bushes behind him. Andy cautiously turned to investigate. Something had just darted away. He moved closer and shone his light on the source of the noise. To his surprise, there was Ruby, sitting on the ground, covered in scratches and wounds. "Madam," Andy exclaimed, relief washing over him. "It's so fortunate you're safe." Isaac, upon hearing Andy's shout, froze in place. Andy quickly reported to him, "I found Madam." Ruby, still shaken and disoriented from her encounter with the monster, felt a wave of fear wash over her as she faced the search party. Though she was relieved to be away from the weasel monster, the thought of facing Isaac made her stomach churn. She felt even more terrified. Andy noticed a leaf stuck to Ruby's forehead and carefully removed it. As he turned it over, he saw blood on her skin beneath it. Ivan, another member of the party, gently pushed Andy aside and told Ruby, "Come quickly, let's take you back." Ruby followed slowly, trying to calm herself, reassuring herself that it was good to be back, that things might be okay. But just as she felt a hint of relief, Isaac's voice cut through the air. His tone was cold, dripping with sarcasm. "My wife? It seems you can't go a single day without causing trouble, can you?" The words sent a jolt of panic through Ruby. Her heart pounded rapidly and her knees trembled. Overwhelmed by fear and exhaustion from her injuries, she lost her balance and collapsed to the ground. Looking up at Isaac, she was filled with dread. In that moment, it truly felt as if he was going to kill her right there on the spot. Seeing Ruby in such a state only made Isaac angrier. His voice was sharp as he sternly commanded, "Get up!" Andy, wanting to speak on Ruby's behalf, was abruptly cut off. "Didn't I tell you not to attract my attention like this?" Isaac snapped. Ruby knew she had upset Isaac again. She obediently lowered her head and apologized, trying her best to hold back tears. But what else could she do? Isaac frowned, clearly frustrated. He didn't want to see Ruby like this at all. In front of everyone, Isaac unexpectedly lifted Ruby into his arms. His tone serious, he said, "We need to treat her wounds first." He then ordered all his subordinates to withdraw from the forest. Andy and Ivan, who had been bracing themselves for Isaac to vent his anger on Ruby, breathed a sigh of relief. The group headed straight toward the castle, but the atmosphere was tense and quiet, with only the sound of the horses' hooves breaking the silence. Isaac allowed Ruby to lean against him, adjusting his pace to the slowest possible speed to avoid aggravating her injuries. Ruby, feeling the warmth of his embrace, secretly observed his face. But Isaac betrayed no emotion. She couldn't tell what he was thinking. Slowly, Ruby closed her eyes, feeling the exhaustion from the day's events catching up with her. Once back at the castle, Ruby's wounds were bandaged, and she drifted into sleep. After what felt like hours of deep rest, she slowly opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was Isaac sitting at her bedside, quietly watching her. Her immediate reaction was to apologize. "I'm sorry for falling asleep," Ruby murmured, her voice still groggy. Isaac didn't waste time. "Explain everything," he demanded. Ruby, still confused, hesitated for a moment before recounting the day's events truthfully. She told him that Freya had suggested a horse-riding competition, that she had set off along the path Freya indicated, and then, out of nowhere, something had reached out from the bushes. Ruby's heart raced as Isaac's words landed heavily in the air. She had been trying to make sense of everything that had happened, and now this shocking revelation. Freya had said she led Ruby into the forest at her request, and that she tried to stop her because she knew it was dangerous. Ruby's mind swirled. She couldn't fathom why Freya would say such a thing. Isaac's piercing gaze was unwavering as he asked, "So, is Freya lying?" His words were like ice, cutting through Ruby's confusion. A wave of questions crashed through Ruby's mind. Why would Freya lie about this? Was she trying to avoid taking responsibility, or was there something more sinister behind it? Everything had been fine just moments ago, and now the situation had turned on its head. Isaac didn't wait for an answer. Go back to Romania. I'll take you back no matter what," he declared, his voice firm. Ruby's eyes widened in shock. She had always known that their marriage would end eventually, but not like this. The Romanian royal family would be more than happy to find an excuse to annul their marriage, and her father's family would probably demand it. But Isaac was the one saying it. Her mind raced, wondering if he was doing this out of anger or something more. The reality of the situation hit her hard. If the marriage was annulled, Elle would be forced to marry the Prince of Doria. If Elle died, Ruby would be left helpless, and her father's accomplice would have succeeded in his plan. She couldn't let that happen. Isaac's cold voice broke through her thoughts. "Anyway, we didn't marry for love. You being here isn't good for either of us, so go home." For the first time, Ruby felt a surge of defiance rise within her. She clutched the blanket, her emotions overwhelming her. Without thinking, she threw herself at Isaac, kneeling at his feet in desperation. "I can't go back," Ruby pleaded, her voice breaking. Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. "It's all my fault. I won't do it again. Please forgive me. I'll accept any punishment. I'll accept whatever punishment I deserve, please." Isaac's expression hardened as he forced her to look at him. He took a deep breath, his voice turning cold and cruel as he confessed his feelings for the first time. I hate you. Your lowly status disgusts me. Why do you always act like this? Whether you live or die isn't my concern, but why am I causing such a commotion in the middle of the night? Ruby's heart shattered at his words, the final blow to her already fragile spirit. Just because of you? What are you that I should care so much? I'm going crazy trying to understand. Isaac's words hung in the air, sharp and cutting. After his outburst, silence filled the room. Ruby, her heart heavy, realized something. Despite everything, she had become more than just a passing thought to Isaac. He had wavered, even if only for a moment, because of her words. It was a small victory in a sea of conflict, but to her it was everything. She was no longer invisible to him, no longer just a side character in his life. I'll do anything, she repeated, her voice soft and desperate, like a broken record that couldn't stop playing. Isaac paused, his eyes flicking toward her as if assessing her sincerity. Ruby's voice was unwavering as she repeated herself once more. I'll do anything, so please spare me. Isaac's expression softened for just a moment before he put his hands to his face in frustration and stormed out of the room, leaving Ruby to sink into the depths of despair. The silence was deafening, suffocating her with its weight. Freya van Fuana, a perfect noble lady, always confident, elegant, and adored by all. She had been described in the novel as a character who never lost her composure. No matter how much Rhea provoked her, Freya always played the role of peacemaker, dealing with every situation with intelligence and grace. This was the kind of woman Ruby had hoped to befriend, thinking that perhaps they could become close despite the dangers that surrounded her. But Freya's hostility from the start had made no sense. Ruby had done nothing to provoke her. Then, a sentence echoed in Ruby's mind, one that had been haunting her for some time. An existence not worth caring about is becoming increasingly bothersome. Ruby didn't understand it. She didn't understand why Freya treated her like this, nor did she know what to do with the painful uncertainty swirling in her chest.